Welcome everybody. So excited to be here with you. Our first group coaching, our Praxis coaching, which will focus on personal foundations. Welcome everybody this morning, this afternoon, wherever you are coming in from. Again, just as a reminder, this recording is only for our purposes, will not be circulated. Okay. And we'll the recording will stay within this group. Each of our sessions are recorded for folks who miss or would like a replay of what we talked about. So again, welcome everybody. All right. Before I dive in, I just want to kind of give everybody a lay of the land. So what we usually do with group coaching is we'll do a very quick check-in at the beginning to hold a little bit of space to see if there are any logistical questions about about accessing, material, et cetera, et cetera. Um, we will always take a minute to pause and go through our community agreements. This helps bring everybody into the space, also invites a little bit of transition and mindfulness, getting the brain ready for this group coaching session. And we will dive into a little bit of large group engagement. Because a group is so large, we will then move into some breakouts as well. I just want to acknowledge that Brian, again, is not here with us today. So our breakouts will be a little larger than usual, right? But we'll have breakouts. And then we'll come back to large group discussion, and then we'll wrap up and spend a little bit of time looking ahead. So that's what you can expect during our time together today. Keith, is there anything to add in terms of expectations and format before I ask about logistics?
No, I think that we'll get folks to share here in a little bit. And we really want to invite really open, genuine, vulnerable sharing, which I think recording puts a little pause on that. But as Don said, we're not going to share this with people beyond this cohort. It evolves. So you won't be, we won't turn your inner critic into a YouTube star.
And thanks, Keith, for mentioning that. We will also be using chat as well. So you can get your fingers ready for a little bit of chat if you want to open your chat window. And if it's helpful for you, you can have some of because it's Praxis group coaching, you can have some of the materials, the curriculum ready for you to refer to as well, whatever you need. All right. So we're inviting you to get yourself ready for engagement. Okay. And again, let's start with logistical questions. Are there any questions about the logistics of Evolve so far? Everybody doing okay? Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of head nodding. Okay,
I'll just
great.
mention something that I've been mentioning with my
Mhm.
coachees. It'll be super helpful if you can stay up to speed with that timeline, particularly ahead of these sessions and ahead of your meeting with your coach, because we kind of anticipate that you're going to do that. We also know that reality sets in, and we're all doing the best that we can. I would also say that I've talked with several folks about the workbook, and the workbook is really designed to be a resource to you. And my suggestion is before you watch a module, that you scan the workbook page. So each module has a workbook page, or sometimes two, but mostly one. And I would just scan that ahead. And then as you're watching the module, say, oh, this is super helpful. I'm going to totally do these reflections and do this activity. Or that might be helpful for other people, but I don't think it's going to serve me. And you
Yeah.
can do it in the workbook pages, you can do it in your journal, but you're not turning that into anybody. So if it's useful, if it helps you, do it. And if it doesn't, then skip on to the next thing and go about that. Um, Also, we don't anticipate that every module is a hit for you. That's not our goal. And so if you find like, oh, I've done this a dozen times, then great, good for you. Move from knowing to doing, right? Um, and some might be definitely more resonant. So don't expect that you're going to need to talk about every module with your coach or with us. There might be some that are way more important. because they really resonate with you or they're really challenging for you. And so we really rely on you to kind of pick and choose. Here's where I want to put the focus, right? We're not trying to cover everything.
Thanks for that reminder, Keith. All right. Any logistical questions at all? Everyone? Okay, good. All right. So again, oh, Ricky, go ahead. I see your hand.
I haven't had my meeting with Brian yet, but just in full transparency, how do like Brian, I mean, Keith was talking about making sure you kind of stay ahead, and
Mhm.
we just had a significant disruption at our institution like a week ago. So I already feel like I'm going to be woefully behind because I'm trying to play catch up with some divisional news that just came out. So is there a way to know like I don't want to get so far behind to where it's like I'm not getting the full utility of the program, but then also I want to try to do my best to stay up on things while also dealing with tough news that just came down. So how should we wrestle with those kind of things and going at the end of the semester and budgets considerations and
Yeah.
bad news and all that stuff?
I would really suggest, and Don might have some thoughts, I would really suggest set aside at least an hour, maybe two, to watch the modules and do the workbook. I don't think you'll need that much time each week to do that, but I think having it set aside will give you the ample time, and then if it's got to be eaten into. I also think that I've heard from some of you that you're not watching the videos, you're listening to them while you're walking the dog, while you're folding laundry, while you're doing other things. And there are some of the modules where there is a visual that would be helpful. So I would recommend not listening to the audio, which is provided, and you might want to do that. But I would recommend watching the video and then maybe putting it in your pocket while you're doing other things so that you can pull it out and see the visual real quickly if Don mentions that in the video. So that might be a way to what I call fold time, bring some other things on your commute while you're working out, while you're doing home chores, making dinner for the family, getting from here to there, sitting on the sideline of soccer games, all those kinds of things that we go. Um, and Ricky, do your best.
Yeah.
You want to add?
No, I mean, nothing to add, and just know that we're here to support you and help you, right? So if you have, specific questions on how to manage certain things, don't hesitate to reach out to us or your coach as well. I know you're still figuring out the schedule with Brian, right? So Brian will be a great resource for you too. And we all understand, right? You get behind, it's okay. So thank you, Ricky, for asking that question because I'm sure other folks are thinking just like you are, especially as we approach commencement season. So, okay. All right. So, again, this is Praxis coaching, right? There's two kinds of group coaching. We have Praxis coaching and emergent coaching. In Praxis coaching, we give you the opportunity to focus on things that might have come up for you in the curriculum, right, in the content. And we're asking you to think about what's coming up for you in terms of how you might apply to your role, to your institution, to your leadership. But what grounds praxis coaching is really the curriculum and the content, right? Emergent coaching, in contrast, right, it can be very connected to praxis coaching. We don't have hard lines with what you can and can't talk about. We just invite you to enter in the conversation in emergent coaching with context. There might be things that are happening, right, in which as in a group, our group wisdom, we can talk through that and we can also connect it to things that are coming up for us in the evolve experience. All right. So it really gives you two different modes and two different spaces to talk about things that are front of mind and immediately relevant to you in your professional context. Okay. So that's a difference. Sometimes the two get blurred. It's okay. Keith and Brian and I, again, are not very strict on it, but we, as facilitators for this session, will try and, keep things on point for you. Okay. All right. Okay, we good? Any questions on that? Everybody good? All right. Okay. So we're all clear what we're doing here today. So just let me very quickly go through the community agreements and I'll put these in chat as well for us. By now, you should have gone through, and if you haven't, it's okay. This might be familiar to you, but Brian's video on Brave Space. And the community agreements are grounded in Brian's video that introduces Brave Space to us. So I'm just going to go through very quickly the community agreements in the video, and then I'm going to ask you if there are any questions or concerns about these agreements. I'll also ask you if there are any additions or modifications. So you can be thinking about that as you're hearing, as you're listening to what I share with you. Okay. So in the video, Brian asked us, to think about Brave Space broadly in terms of how we're going to create the space that we're going to be spending, together, this time that we're going to have together, right? So he offers us a couple of things to consider. So first, acknowledge and make room for emotions. For some of us, this space is one of the few, if not the only space to come in and talk about the things that are really, really impactful for us. And so with that, sometimes there are a lot of emotions that come up, right? So Keith and I in this space and Brian, we hold that space by acknowledging and making room for those emotions. Okay. We also welcome you to disagree with one another, and we also welcome tensions, but we ask you to be mindful to unpack them with care, right? We don't expect you all to agree with one another. We also don't expect you to take the same approach in some of the things that you're troubleshooting or working through. So there may be disagreements and tensions, and we ask you to unpack them with care. We also will invite you to acknowledge intentions and account for impact, right? It's that thing that we're always trying to be mindful of is sometimes what comes out, our intentions are different than the impact. And you all have done this before. We invite you to hold yourself to accounting for that impact, as Keith, Brian, and I will also hold this space for you to make those acknowledgments. Also, challenge by choice, right? Where we say this to students, we say this to our direct reports all the time, right? Challenge by choice, and that means, right? Definitely engage. Challenge yourself to engage with things that may be uncomfortable. Be mindful of when you're ready to engage and when you're not, and take a moment to reflect on those moments where you might feel like you're holding back a little. What might be there for you? Okay. And then respect, I'll cover the last two together, respect and no attacks. We talk a lot about cultivating a space where we're actually listening to one another, where we're encouraging you to own your intentions and your impact, to welcome and welcome disagreements and tensions. But in order to do that, right, we engage one another with respect and no attacks. And actually, I have one more, which is confidentiality that I'll add, where again we take with us the learning, the ideas, the concepts, and the specifics of the stories. They stay here. Okay, so I'll put these in chat right here as you think about if there's anything you'd like to add, if there's any modifications or requests. Now would be the time to share. Okay. Again, these are ongoing community agreements. If there's anything that needs to be added later on or modified, right, please let us know. All right, Keith.
Should we have some fun? Let's
Yeah.
have some fun. We want to start off by getting you all talking. So, we would like you to do a brief introduction and then a little bit of a share. And so, if you could help us with that, that would be great. And we would love to hear from everybody. And I just counted, I can't believe it, but we do have everyone here. So, that is just amazing. So, thank you all for rearranging your schedules in busy times. That's just incredible. Thank you for that. I think you'll get so much out of it. What I would like you to do is just quickly share your name, pronouns if you'd like, your role in your institution. So just name, rank, and serial number super quick. And then name one of either your inner critic, your core values, your life purpose statement, or your inner guide. And don't tell us the big long story about your inner guide and how it came to you in a dream in a pasture in the mountains and how it's incredible and it's changed your life. Just my inner guide is an eagle, right? And you don't have to do all of those. So just one, any one value, any one inner guide, any one inner critic, any one life purpose. What would be fun about this is we're going to know so much about you in zero context whatsoever, right? And so you can pick and choose. I'll go first. My name is Keith Edwards. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm a speaker and consultant. I say my institution is keithedwards.com. My inner guide is a Jedi master. Who would like to go next? You can just unmute and jump in.
I'll go.
Great.
Hi everyone, Sherry Atkinson, Associate Vice Chancellor at UC Davis, and I'm going to share one of my core values, which is integrity.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Linda Bachman, Dean of Students at the University of St. Thomas. She, her, hers, and my inner guide is Lake Michigan.
Hey everyone, my name is Kevin McClure. I'm a professor of higher education and I'm chair of the Department of Educational Leadership at University of North Carolina, Wilmington. And Keith and I just worked on this recently, but I didn't have anything right at that moment, so I figured I'd give him an update, give you all an update. So my inner critic is a little scraggly, hairy fly that I swat with a fly swatter when he pops up. I'm not going to tell you what he says to me, but that's my visual for the inner critic.
Beautiful. Perfect. Perfect.
Okay, I'll go next. Hi everyone, Jen Rentschler, she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Student Involvement at Radford. My inner critic is Jabba the Hutt. I don't know what I'm going to do with him yet, but that's what he looks like, and he's a little bit ridiculous. So it's a lot easier to ignore something when you think it's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. I recommend maybe a chain strangulation. Like that could work really well. Yeah.
I'll go. Again, Ricky Frierson, he, him, Assistant Vice President here at Colorado State University. Life purpose, to be a lighthouse in the midst of a storm.
Hey folks, Joaquin Becerra, he, him pronouns. I serve as a Dean of Students at University of California, Santa Barbara. One of my core values is humanity.
I can go. Sarah Revior, she, her. I am Assistant Vice President for Residence Life and Housing at SUNY Oswego. And my critic is Mandy from the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, if you guys remember that cartoon.
Hi, everyone. Miles Ashlock-Burke, he, him, Assistant Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs at UC Santa Barbara. And my inner guide, it's a duo. It's my grandmother and my cousin in the front of a black Ford Crown Victoria with red velour seats.
Amazing. Amazing.
Hey everyone, I'm Tanya Schmidt. I use she and hers pronouns. I am the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. And my inner guide is definitely also my grandma Carrie, who is standing at the front door of my house waiting for me to get off the bus. I know that's going way back, but the care that she gave me is just exactly what I need.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shelley Jansen. I'm the Director of Center for Learning at Western Colorado University. And my inner guide would be water.
Did we get everybody? Oh no, I think we have
Antonia.
Antonia. Yeah.
Sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is our president's investiture. It is a lot happening. So Antonia Rowe, Florida A&M University, Associate Vice President for Student Affairs, and my core value would be compassion.
Dawn, your turn.
Yes. Okay, so Dawn, she, they pronouns. My inner critic is a little furry monster that sits on my left shoulder that speaks in a very high-pitched, annoying voice. Right there, right there. Okay.
So these four modules are the first four in the personal foundations. When I'm coaching a client for 12 sessions, these are the first 4 sessions. So basically, in these 4, you're getting 4 full hour coaching sessions all into one, and then talking about it with your coach. The modules, video modules, give us a chance to do this and reflect and have that, and then talk with your coach. So I think it's really valuable. I call these the cornerstones. If you've ever built a house or understand what that looks like, you put these 4 cornerstones in the corner, and once you have those set, that you can build the foundation, you can build the house, you can build everything else around it. My experience is they don't all land with everybody. So if one of these just is not landing with you and you don't get anything for your inner guide and you've watched the video a couple times and you've done the reflection, it's just nothing is coming, talk with your coach about it, and maybe it emerges or maybe it doesn't. But those folks tend to get a lot out of their core values or their life purpose statement, and certainly noticing and handling their inner critic. And some of you might be that far in the personal foundations, and some of you might be moving on to some of the other content around leadership traumas and things like that. So we can certainly bring any of that in that folks want to, and just know that other folks are playing catch up, as Ricky alluded to at the beginning. We're going to do some large group conversation and then some breakout rooms and then some large group conversation. And really the prompt that we want to invite you into is very wide open, so you can take it wherever you want to go. And the prompt here is, how are you connecting the content from the modules to your leadership? Okay. And again, if some modules are not connecting to your leadership, that's totally fine. Don't worry about that. Focus on the ones that are. How are they showing up? How are you integrating them into your supervision or leading a meeting or having a tough conversation or setting some boundaries and going home? Any of those things. And we think about leadership not just as what you do for work, but your whole life and all of that, because you're just one person. So we'd love to just kind of kick off by giving us something to chew on, by having 3 of you share, hey, this is something, here's some content that I'm getting from Evolve, and here's how I'm applying it. And then maybe Don and I might chime in. And if we can get 3 of you to do this in the large group, then what we're going to do is move you into some breakout rooms where you have a chance to talk amongst yourselves and kind of get a little bit more airtime in some smaller groups. So are there 3 of you who'd be willing to sort of say, here's where I'm at, here's what I'm working on as we go. Here's some content, and oh, I'm putting it to practice here. It's showing up here. I have a question about this. We need 3 role models to lead us in a large group, and then we'll move into small
I see
groups.
Jen. Yeah.
Okay.
So I have to hop off at 2:30 because my dog is graduating from a therapy dog program. That's my reason for. So I want to go first because I want to feel like I'm contributing something before I go.
It's a very big day for a very big puppy, I hear.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of big days that people are having. I'm lucky enough that my supervisor has gone through or is almost done, I think, with this program. And so one of the ways I'm connecting it is building in time to my one-on-one to use what I'm learning right now, and I'm using a lot of reflection. April has been very full, and I talked with Keith about this yesterday. I tend to move very fast. And as I have gone through since yesterday afternoon through this morning, I've made it all the way up through leadership trauma. I have as I'm listening or processing what I'm learning, I'm like, oh, I missed it there. Oh, I missed it over there, right? So I have set aside some time to pick 2 or 3 examples of things that have happened in just the last 3 weeks that I was moving too quickly through to try to get it off my plate. And where there are opportunities that, should a situation like that come up again, or should I feel that pressure again, I have some tools now that I can use to process a little differently, to move maybe not slower, but a little more intentionally. And so I've already, like I said, made a list for a one-on-one next week to talk through it. One example would be it was like last week. We're in the middle of club and organization re-registration. I've sent multiple reminders. And I had a student reach back and say, you're sending this information to the wrong person. You need to send it to this person. I've already told you 3 times I'm not the right person. And this is like a Thursday at 4:30 response was, it's not my responsibility to update your information in our software. I send it to whoever you have listed as your contact person, and we have sent multiple times instructions on how to change that. I don't have time or capacity to change this for 250 people. To which he then forwards to a regional director of his fraternity, who is also a lawyer, who is now really angry that this organization is now behind because they didn't come to any of the required workshops because the information was going to the wrong person. So my snarky response has now cost us a potential FOIA situation where this lawyer wants to know, why did you send this to the wrong person? And in the moment, I think if I go back to core values, and compassion came up for me, right? Patience is something I think is really important. I don't always practice it well. I might have changed my tone a little. I don't think I would have said, here, let me go fix that for you. But if I had addressed it slightly differently, maybe he wouldn't have felt so inspired to escalate it. And so it's just an opportunity to think about, as a leader, where can I pause? How do I word something? And how do I still hold students accountable? I don't know that I have a perfect, here's what I would do differently, but I need to be able to hold folks accountable, and I need to watch my sass a little bit so that I am coming across consistently as the leader that I want to be. So there's an example.
That's a great one. And I think it's a great example where we might find ourselves in that moment reactive to the email, pissed off, irritated, frustrated, reactive, and have that sort of physical, like, huh, I'm going to do this reactivity, which is superhuman. And so if you feel that reactivity, nothing wrong with that. We just don't type and send emails from that place, right? We maybe type it up and wait till the next day, or we wait. And I think what you're alluding to is what we call the leadership superpower of slowing down. And I think we're in this busy reactivity, go, 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 and we don't have time to do that. When in reality, it costs us time to not do that, as you're saying. Like, this is going to cost you quite a bit of time and hassle. And so the leadership superpower of slowing down so that we can move quickly. I tell my kids when we're rushing off, I need you to move quickly, but not be in a hurry. Because when they're in a hurry, they forget their jacket and their shoes, and it costs us a bunch of time because we have to come back and we have to do this. So I need you to go quickly, but not be in a hurry. And sometimes that slowing down can do that. It's a great opportunity when you slow down to go, when we're reactive, what are my values? Oh, compassion. That's a good one for this one. Patience. I don't have to respond right away, right? Or what would my inner guide say about this? Or when you wake up at 3:30 in the morning freaking out about the FOIA request, what's your inner guide have to say about that situation at that moment in time? Or where does this fall in line with your life purpose? Or is it your inner critic? So these are just great moments to just kind of consult as you go. Don, you want to chime in there before we get to our next one?
No, I feel like Jen, there was so much reflection and connection there, right? That you're already, going into. And the fact that you're starting to document your mindfulness by creating a list of things, right? I would invite you to think about that list n not as things that need to be corrected per se, right? That list can also be something that you can hold in terms of reflecting on how you're showing up in particular instances and what might be there. There may be patterns. There also in that list may also reveal things that activate you that maybe you are not aware of, maybe things that trigger you, right? Which are not, and Keith and Brian and I talk about this all the time too. There's this one aspect in which, yes, there is that personal responsibility there. And, right, there might be other things that are going on for you, right, that are not immediately solvable, right? And that's part of the compassion for yourself. I'm going to lean into your one of your core values, right? So
Yeah.
just more to think about.
Great role modeling, Jen. Can we get a couple more folks to come in and share? This is some of the content, and here's a real tangible, concrete, specific situation you're bringing into. Even if it's messy, we can help maybe clean it up. Go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, I think a few things resonating for me. Uh, our current context and environment. We have four new vice presidents who will all be starting in a month or two. One of them we're in the process of hiring right now, who will be my boss, the vice president for student affairs. So in the midst of all of this like half of our senior level turning over within 2 months. I'm already sensing and picking up on the jockeying that's occurring. And so one of the things, and that jockeying coming from multiple different places, I think it's going to be really important for me to really be tuning into my values, my purpose, what keeps me grounded in my work every day, in the midst of a lot of change that's about to happen, that we're really in the midst of. And then I would just comment too that I've actually had a few people, staff members who I don't directly supervise, but who have sought me out recently, who have shared their own experience of leadership trauma, from a colleague of mine. So you've likely all been in similar situations where you have someone, and it has truly been an experience of leadership trauma for them. So I have also been in this role of trying to coach and be present for some staff members recently. So the leadership trauma piece just resonated with me and helping me think about how I'm helping some people move through.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think those cornerstones, I often talk about higher ed is like leaning through a storm. I imagine a hurricane with everything flying around. And those cornerstones can help us be the calm eye at the center of the storm, where we can be, as you said, grounded, centered, rooted, so powerful and so helpful. And if you feel yourself ungrounded, uncentered, unrooted, go back to those cornerstones. I often talk about the core values get tattooed on your left forearm and life purpose gets tattooed on your right forearm. They can be invisible tattoos if you like, but imagine those tattoos and just constantly looking at them and turning to them for 10 minutes of reflection or for 2 seconds of compassion. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just add that, Linda, you point out something really interesting and important for us, that I think needs to be named, right? As you're going through Evolve, there's this duality of experience that you'll have, right? So the first part might be, okay, what are these things? What are these things doing for me? What's coming up for me, right? In terms of my role, my context, my leadership identity. And then you may find yourself, and you illustrated this as well. What does this mean for those who I manage, I supervise, right? In your case, oh, there are others who are sharing leadership traumas with me. How do I support them? Right? So many of you will find this, you're in this duality, right? So this is definitely a space for you to kind of think through and talk through that. And then I also invite you in your workbook reflections, if it's helpful for you to think through, for myself and then also in my role for others, right? Some of the modules will definitely bring up things, okay? Having said that, right, this is for you, Okay, so don't, shortcut yourself or cheat yourself out of spending that, Jen referred to what Evolve was doing for her, giving her time and space to slow down and to think about what's important for her. Okay, so but yeah, but Linda, you illustrated that duality, really, really beautifully.
And some of you might have experienced as you get going and evolve and start reading this, it's super common for people to think to themselves, you know who really needs this? My boss. My boss needs to be in Evolve. If my boss, I don't need this. My boss, if my boss would just do this, we'd be fine. So you're welcome to refer them. But as Don's saying, be a little selfish, be a little self-indulgent, be a little self-focused. It is a luxury and it's necessary and it's needed as you go. Let's get one more in the large group and then we'll move you into some small breakout rooms where you can sort of chat amongst yourself and share and connect. And sometimes it's helpful. Sometimes it's a lot easier to help others than it is to see our own selves because we're super caught up in it. So one more person want to share in the large group?
I'll go ahead and share. So last fall, I was feeling like I was swimming up water and getting a lot of colleagues coming to me with negativity over some decisions, over what our president and leadership had done, and they were valid and they were factual information, and it was just very hard because I one of the values that I have is just being positive and trying to solve their problems or trying to help them work through it. And it kind of domino affected on me. And it created an environment where there were like rumors getting back to the VP and leadership level of things that I had shared, which may have been accurate and not accurate from when it got back to them. And it really like challenged kind of my ethos and values to where I kind of stepped back a little bit this fall. And I'm like, okay, I need to stop doing that. And so I kind of channeled it into more of a positive approach. And so what can I do to help our faculty and staff and students kind of come out of this? And so we created a wellness program starting in February of this year, of where we just 1 hour, we do it for free. We don't charge. We invite all faculty, staff, and students to kind of showcase the wonderful practitioners that we have in the Valley. And um, it was hard to get to, but it definitely has been more of me and more aligned with my values than working against my values and continuing that negative channel, which I didn't really enjoy being a part of at all.
Mhm. Awesome. Yeah, just a good chance to slow down, do that self-reflection. Um, oops. Uh, I know I need to clean that up. And then, and I love how you flipped it from this is a problem to what's a good solution, right? It's one of the things I spend my Sunday mornings trying to do when I'm mad at the world and all of the things that I think shouldn't be happening, and then think, well, what does the world need, and how do I offer that? Yeah, little critical hope practice. Cool. Anyone else want to jump in here with anything before we move you into some breakout groups? Okay. The question for the breakout groups is going to be the exact same prompt, just continuing this conversation. How are you connecting the content from the modules to your leadership? And Dawn has been so helpful and put that in the chat. We're going to get you into these breakout rooms. And I just got
And
to go ahead,
and
Dawn, because I got to configure them a little bit.
Yeah, and as Keith is doing that, I just want to clarify. We actually decided we're going to give you all some time to talk with one another without me and Keith in the room initially, okay? And we're going to give you the option if you want us to come in, you can. But for the most part, we're going to give you your own space to talk with one another about this question. And so you can go as deep as you want. You can also talk about whatever is, top of mind for you, but just providing you that space. So Keith. Hopefully that gave you a moment to be able to
Just
set things
beautiful
up.
and buying me time. Yes, we are
Okay.
good. Yes, we are good. I got that. So Zoom has put you into some random rooms, and you'll be there. Dawn, you're going to get an invite. You can just decline that.
Okay.
But we're going to have rooms of one room of four and two rooms of three. You're going to have 12 minutes. So make sure that you manage your time and say hi and introduce each other a little bit, but get into some of the content, what's emerging, and how you're connecting and share and feedback and insights. And the goal here is to be as helpful as you can to yourself, but also the folks that you're in with. And then maybe you might get stuck or some questions or want some clarity. And that's what we'll do when we'll come back. So we're going to give you 12 minutes. We'll start moving you back here at about the 55-minute mark in whatever time zone you're in. So I'm going to open up these rooms, let you join. Any questions before we do that? No, you're good. Okay, here are your rooms. All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm just going to get everybody muted just so we don't get the background noise. And Don, I muted you too, but go ahead.
All right, folks. As you come back into the space, if there are any ideas, thoughts that you had in small group you just want to hold on to, I invite you to take a moment to jot those things down. And this is a great reminder, right, about confidentiality. The breakout room space is not the same as the large group space. So if there's something that was shared in breakout, please make sure that you get consent. If you want to share something, there's a direct messaging function in Zoom. Okay, this is where you can use that tool, but honor that confidentiality in your breakout space as well. Okay. All right. Okay. So I love that Miles has already jumped in, right? Dr. Frierson was telling Linda and him, thanks to Linda and Ricky both for thoughtful sharing, compassionate space. Lips are sealed. All right. I love that energy. All
Yeah, I
right.
do love thank yous and appreciation for your groups in the chat. So feel free to.
Yeah. Yeah. I was telling Keith, at while you all were in the room that I really hope this space is a space where we can really dig into what's coming up, to challenge ourselves, right? To talk about the hard things, things that, might be coming up for us, things that we're, stuck, that is causing stuckness, right? And so I invite you all to be courageous and lean into that brave space. Okay. So, all right. So just let me start out with a general, what were some things that came up for you in small group conversation that you want to put into the space for us to dig into?
I'll go to
Yeah.
much with so people probably want to know. I just pretty much said that, a lot of us are probably going through a lot of tough things, but that's the blessing and the curse of being chosen for the time that we're in right now. Is that there's a reason why we're in the positions that we're in during this current time in the nation, in the country. There's a reason why, you're not 30 years behind or 20, 30 years ahead. And so I shared the analogy of what I tell my team all the time is that here in Colorado, there's a lot of mountain trails. But some people have to have a vision to cut through the roughage and through the materials, and so you get the bruises, the scrapes, the aches, and the pains, so that you create a trail for folks to lead and take people along that trail, along the journey. But to be a trailblazer, you have to have a vision that most people can't see, and so there's a blessing and a curse in being the ones who have to endure the troubled times and the storms, because there's a weight and a fortitude that we have to hold to forge people to get to the other side, so that leaders who follow behind us know what trails to take and what not to take, so that you can ensure the safety of those behind you. So it's tough now, but that's the part of being in the storm. And so hence the whole lighthouse in the storm and the trailblazer.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Ricky. I saw heads nodding. I saw folks really taking in what you shared, and Sarah's hearts. And you're really showing up in your values around being that lighthouse, amidst the storm. Thank you for sharing that. What else came up for folks?
In our group, we were sharing similar stories, and each time someone spoke, another person chimed in like, you're describing exactly what's happening. Get out of my head, right? Especially as it relates to the like navigating sort of challenging individuals or an individual person, and how to navigate that, and how to show up how we want to show up, but also knowing that there's complex dynamics both from peers and direct reports and all of those kinds of things. So we had a good opportunity to talk about that, and also kind of share some ideas of what we're trying to do with that, and how it ties back for me. I was talking about how it tied back to like the exercise on core values, and really like I was thinking about this before I started this program, and then this has helped, kind of remind me to think through, who do I want to be, how do I want to show up in these cases where it's really frustrating and you feel like others aren't acting in the same ways that I value.
Mhm. Yeah. So Sherry, I'm going to make the assumption that you've done similar values exercises before.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, right. So what was different for you this time? And, how did that show up for you when you were talking about navigating challenging individuals? So first part of the question, how's it different for you this time?
I mean, I think this exercise, I mean, it's been a while since I've done like an explicit like exercise. I've done different card shuffles, different things, like that over the years. But, to like just like brain dump a bunch of them, and it's like you kind of get going, and then I'm like, wait, really, wait, more, but like this idea of like, and then wait, is that a value, or is that so it was like good to sort of sort through things that I value in terms of like core values versus like maybe behaviors, or different things. And then honestly, it was hard to narrow it down or to group them together in some ways. And we talked in our group too a little bit about like putting them in buckets and what context like they might show up differently in different contexts in terms of what's more prevalent. So I think it's always a good exercise to do, and I think it was helpful for me in this moment dealing with the current challenges that I'm, facing, and to really think about that. Okay, how are you gonna, and I mentioned one of my core values earlier is integrity. And so I think, being aware that I didn't feel like my perception of the other person wasn't acting with integrity. I mean, I could also be misunderstanding them, and I've done a lot of self-reflection on it, but you know what I mean? It's like that also probably really got under my skin too. If I assume that person's not acting from a place of integrity, and that's a core value, that's going to like maybe make me show up in a way that it's not the best I could.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll just jump in here because I think it's not that none of you had core values before this activity. You did. But if you can't name them from memory, if you can't say they're this, 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 and this, you can't use them to make decisions. You can't use them to get you grounded in the moment. If they're just, I've got values and, they're just, then they're not useful. They're not tools that you can use. Um, just like it's not that you never had a life purpose, but if you can't say it in a short sentence from memory, you can't put it to use as you decide whether to apply for that role or not, right? It's just yeah, of course I've got a life purpose. So if you can't write it down from memory on an index card, you're not going to be able to put it use for yourself. And so that's why having these so explicit and so concrete is so helpful, and why having a visual and a name for your inner guide. So you can see it and you can name it and call on it. And your inner critic seeing it and having a name for it. So you can say, get out of here, fly. So you can picture Mandy, right? And really get into those. And making them tangible. Now they become like objects and tools you get to use, rather than something you hope that inner guide clarity arrives in the next 2 weeks because you got a big decision to make. You can go to it. Yeah.
Yeah, Ricky, I see your hand.
Yeah, A question back to Keith on that. I think being in a leadership position too, how do you square that with you want to lead with your core values, but there's a distinct difference between your core values as an individual and your values that you must hold and align with as the institutional values. And so
Mhm.
squaring that, right? So there might be things where you want to be transparent and you can't, it's sensitive.
Yeah.
There's things you want to have advocacy for and you can't because it's institutional priority. And so being a new AVP in which I feel like my core values is what got me to the AVP. And now that the institution is in dire straits on a lot of different things, there's institutional values and priorities that might not necessarily score with the individual priorities, but I'm leading an entire division,
Mhm.
right? On the institutional values versus how I personally, as an individual, would lead. So I think I go back to, I don't know, I think she jumped off about the person who shared a little too much earlier
Mhm.
and being like, that might be your transparency value, right? And then the institution, like, well, you're representing the institution, so you can't badmouth us publicly. Like you are an agent of the institution now. You're not, you're not
Yeah.
just an employee of the institution, right? So how do you square those two?
I think I would, and I know Don will have thoughts on this. I would reframe that from a problem. My individual values and my institutional values don't align. That's a problem. To that's how it works, right? Even if you work at the greatest place that's so aligned, there's going to be differences between your individual values and your institutional values. And so rather than seeing that as a problem or a disappointment or frustration, or when I finally work in an institution that is completely in alignment with my values, I think that would be a problem. So how do you, and I hope for this exercise, you weren't thinking about the AVP. I hope you were thinking about Ricky, right? What are my values? And when you can be really clear about yours, then you get to go, well, we're pretty aligned here and we're not so aligned there. And so that's how it works. And how do I navigate that gap? And your president is not aligned 100% with the institutional values and personal values. And how do you navigate that? And I think younger professionals want everything to be aligned. And if it's not, it's their supervisor's problem to fix, right? And as we mature, we go, oh, yeah, I got a lot of personal things that I care about. And I'm fortunate that some of these align and some of them don't. And I navigate that day in and day out. That's a normal part of being a leader in an organization or even in a group, right? Um, my mom and I don't have the same values, right? Some of them are aligned, but some of them aren't. And so, how do we just kind of normalize that and make that a regular part of it um, as we go? I don't know, Don, anything to add, or Ricky, anything you want to?
Yeah, let's bring it back to Ricky because I think you encapsulated it well.
No,
Go
I
ahead,
think
Ricky.
I think that makes sense because I think about, I know my individual values, and then I just know sometimes the perception of me in the role as AVP is like I'm not living up to my values when I know what but I can also separate and compartmentalize. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that higher education is not a corporation. We just get tax benefits. We are very much a corporation. And so like I understand there's business process and priorities that need to be done as operational. And I think when I'm acting in my ambassador, there's still this notion that the individual person, Ricky, and not the leadership person, AVP, is is supposed to be one and the same. And there's times like you're going to have overlap and variance, but I think it's the perception that makes it challenging. So when you're dealing with difficult employees, and I have to be like the institutional value is this, right? Or does that make sense? I don't want to
It
take
does.
up a
And I
lot,
think
but
one of the things that, and this is something we talk a lot about in our summit program for the VP and presidents, is those folks often develop a persona, right? Um, Keith values this, cares about this, wants to interact with the world in this way. And then Vice President Edwards goes about this, right? Or Dr. Edwards does this. And that can be really helpful in some boundaries, some healthy separation, some healthy unattachment. And sometimes the vice president has to send out a notification to the campus that is in conflict with Keith's values. And when students are pissed about that, it helps us to remember they're not pissed at Keith. They're pissed at Vice President Edwards who sent that memo. I get it. I'd be pissed at him too, right? And so it helps us separate um, the human versus the role, right? And I think there's places where that integration is really powerful. And I think there's places where that separation is really helpful, right? So when is what is Dr. Frierson doing versus what would Ricky prefer, right? And that's role responsibility, right? And that comes with every job. You know, a kindergarten teacher who's really struggling with breast cancer chemotherapy doesn't get to take that out on the kids, right? That's human, that's super understandable, but you don't get to take that out on 5-year-olds. You got to show up and be patient anyway, even when you don't want to, because we have role responsibility.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, Keith. And I knew that that follow-up would be really great because it Keith is also foreshadowing some of the things that we talk about in our leadership section. So Ricky, you're right there in asking, uh very immediately reflective questions on that. I mean, I think the other thing that I will just the one thing that I will add is that so when you think of values, right, it could also be different values, right? And I mean, in terms of your different roles, but for this exercise, right, is really getting clear on what's there for you, right? Just as a foundation, as Keith is talking about, one of our foundational pieces. Okay. Miles, I see your hand.
Thank you. Well, I don't want to go too far off the trailhead here, but
You're good.
Ricky's question and particularly Keith's response really has me like thinking about that space between personal values and organizational values. It it's like it's one thing to say there's our self and there's our persona, and sometimes we have to like take the average or go in one thing or another. Um, I guess I would love to dive into that a little bit more because the thing that I hear, and I don't know if it's my inner critic or um, my guides, because I think in some ways it's both. Say, wait a minute, like if you're not willing to pull the institution toward values that it doesn't yet hold, then are you the person that students need or the community needs or the future needs for the institution? Because, I think oftentimes when we say like, I don't agree with this personally, but this is just the direction the organization is going. We have colleagues and we have students, and sometimes we have ourselves saying, if you're not willing to do it, get the hell out of the seat. Mm-hmm. And that's really something I'm trying to like wrestle with, I think, in this space. I'll offer that.
There's plenty to chew on there. Thanks, Miles. I'm looking at Don, but Don can't see me. We can't make eye contact on Zoom. What I'm not suggesting is whatever the institution says is fine, and we compromise our ethics and our morals and behave inappropriately. What I would say, if your personal values and the institutional values are way off, how do you use your personal core values to help you navigate that? Right? If your personal core values are integrity, as Sherry's saying, how do I navigate this space using integrity? How is my inner guide? And I think you alluded to that. How do you notice, oh, that's inner critic stuff. Get out of here. I'm turning to my inner guides, right? And what do my inner guides what do my values have to say? My purpose is, and I'll use Ricky's lighthouse in the storm. Well, then I'm sticking around because lighthouses don't buckle and fold the tent when the storm comes along. They stick. So how do you use these things to navigate that? And then sometimes there's deal breakers. This is as far as I'm willing to go, and this I will not do. And I think that's an easy thing to say. One, until it's your livelihood and others depend on you. Two, you think beyond the self-righteousness of that moment and how beautiful and amazing it would be to quit and throw all your papers and storm out in a flurry. I have that fantasy a lot. But then who's going to be in the role? And what will that do to students? So I talk with a leader who's in a very red state who's does gender advocacy and queer advocacy, and her deal is they've never needed me more. It's harder than ever, but they have never needed me more. And so she has such, her purpose is more centered and more grounded. And she's making a lot of compromises day in and day out. But for her to leave in a huff and move to Massachusetts would be nicer for her. But she's so committed to the institution and the students and the community and what's going on there that she's staying in the storm. Now, they could ask her to do things that she wouldn't do and won't compromise. What would you add, Don?
Yeah, I actually am curious. You mentioned something, Miles, where you said, pulling the institution toward you,
Hmm.
right? And I wonder, what does that look like for you as you're navigating the differences between your personal values and your institutional values that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think you teach for the further thoughts. And I think for me, I mean, it's pulling the institution toward like a collective. There's like who we are as a department or a division or a campus, and then there's like who we project to be. And I think like pulling those two things together is probably what I should have said. And I, the only thing that comes up is looking at my values and recent experiences, um, creating time and space for reflection and discussion is like really important. And then, articulating some red lines, kind of hard lines with colleagues or coalitions, is kind of what it looks like to me.
Yeah, and thanks for clarifying that. The the I think there will always be this persistent desire to align, right? In some ways, that's our hopefulness, speaking, right? We want our work to matter. We want our work to be meaningful. We want our values, to be aligned as much as possible. And when they're not, that's when things, get really hard, right? And the thing that I'll build off of, what Keith said is um, each of these pieces, they work in tandem. So your values, your purpose, your inner guide, your inner critic, that's why they're foundational. So they work in tandem, and we give you plenty of time, to think about that. So for you, Miles, right? You're already starting to make those connections. Is that your inner critic talking? Is it, what's going on here? These are the things that are drawing your attention. These are the things, to pay attention to because your intuition is telling you, all right, something is happening here, and I cannot move too quickly without noticing. It's not just misalignment, but is the degree to which things are misaligned, right? And because not all misalignment's the same, right? And it's this moment, right, in which the slowing down is especially helpful. Okay. And also, before I go to Ricky, because I see your hand, right? And also taking into account, you're probably not the only person that's experiencing this misalignment right now. Yeah, I see your head, right? And how does that also factor into this context in which you're trying to make a decision or you're being asked to execute or do something that is deeply misaligned, right? So, Ricky, I see your hand.
I know I hear that. And thanks for that, Don. I was kind of just reflecting back on what Miles was saying. I think both of it is also a look of institutions you go to, you find a strong alignment. And I think there's been a huge, like asteroid shift that hit the nation in 2025. And so I think there's the concern of like, have institutions of higher education fundamentally shifted their values now? or you saw a shift of stated values being shifted once there was external federal pressures? And is this a short-term adaptation, or is this a long-term fixation on a new climate? And what does that mean in higher education, right? And I think that's the concern, for at least for me. And I kind of hear where Miles is saying, it's like I can recognize institutions having to navigate troubling waters and things like that. And so going to that, ship analogy, but then there's things like, okay, I thought our values are things that we stick to as individuals and as larger organizations when there are storms. This is what navigates, but we've seen complete capitulation of institutional values in the midst of storms. And so now I think there's been a bedrock of foundations that have been shooken as far as, okay, what are we really doing? And what happens if this happens again next time, kind of situation, or things get worse? Like, so when, I guess I'm using all aqua analogies. Like if you get hit with a Titanic, I'm not trying to wait with the band to jump off the ship. I'm not trying to, the lifeboats might be gone by that time. So it's just like, if there's another iceberg coming, how do you navigate those troubling waters?
Keith just pulled a book off of his shelf, and I'm like, I'm getting ready to write it down. Keith, you want to do your
No,
book before we go
it's
to
not a
Joaquin?
book. I think I'll add, we have to move to closing up, so we'll try and get Joaquin in here. But an institution not living up to its aspirations is always the case. Always the case. You not living up to your core values is always the case, right? They're always meant to be this aspiration and this gap. And can you put your values in conversation, right? Rather than integrity and compassion, which one wins? What if they had a conversation together and worked it out? What if your inner guide and your life purpose, who seem like they're in conflict, had a conversation? This is, once you do the inner guide, then there's other folks. This is a picture of my ship and all the different people on it. There's a Buddhist monk, there's a triathlete, there's a stand-up comedian, there's a Jedi master. So once you move beyond your inner guide, like who else is in there?
One more time, Keith.
Yeah.
So everyone can see.
Who else is in there? Is there a cheerleader in there? Is there a mountain climber in there? Is Matthew McConaughey in there? Is there a nurse in there? These are just some of the folks. So the inner guide is just kind of the beginning. Who else is in there who you might want to call on as you go? Go ahead, Joaquin, and then we'll have to move to wrapping up.
Yep.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody speaking. Again, it's like y'all are in my head. This is so it's perfect timing. And I'm also, is this a rite of passage? Does everybody go through this? You see every person on this path? For me, it's actually, I'm less worried about the interim this and the new president and the chancellor, all that stuff. I'm actually, the thing that's really clashing with my values right now, and that sort of gap that we've identified that, you can rationalize most days, is actually my own community, right? The people who you kind of, the silence and the fear that doesn't take on or engage with those who you don't know. It's the ones that you have been in the trenches with for years, maybe, or in the meetings, and you're like, what's going on? We all have our tragedies, we all have our responses. Like, what's going on. We all kind of get it, right? But there's just times now I feel like the silence is deafening. And so my own values are kind of like in some sort of contradiction there with just my folks, more so than the leadership or the hierarchy. Because the hierarchy is the hierarchy. It's always going to be like that, or else there'd be freedom. So I think there's some notion there for me around my work, around how I engage with my community differently within this role than I have in the past. Yeah, so that's just kind of that's what's coming up for me as the brilliance is being shared right now.
Yeah, and the thing that I'm hearing from you, Joaquin, is also your community, it sounds like, has also been a source of support for you, right? In your ability to do the work that is values aligned, right? And when they're silent or when they're fearful, which also might result in silence, right? There's something else going on there that you're not, maybe right now you're putting this into this space because you're wondering what else is going on. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, how do we engage with that from curiosity versus judgment?
No.
Which is something a therapist said to me yesterday. So I'm working on it too, Joaquin, right? I get real judgment's super easy, self-righteousness super easy, genuine curiosity. What's going on with you that I haven't heard from you? It might be fear, it might be exhaustion, it might be I did that and it didn't work. I'm trying new things. Who knows? Who knows? I do want to move us to wrapping up for our time and looking ahead a little bit. So we'll be bringing this conversation to a close. In 2 weeks, we'll have another conversation on emergent coaching. And there, today we started with content and connected it to your leadership and lives. There, we will start with what's going on in your leadership and lives, and we will connect it to content. Okay. So bring your difficult choices, that tough meeting, that hard conversation, bring those things and we'll connect it to that. And it'll be a similar format. And Brian will be with us. Then you will be moving into out of personal foundations into the emerging executive leadership. And you can think about personal foundations as the capacity. We're trying to deepen and broaden your capacity. What you are capable of holding is more. That will be about your capabilities, the skills, the tactics, the strategies, the approaches you can utilize. And I think one of the things we do is we give leaders more capabilities, but we don't deepen their capacity to hold more capabilities. And we're just pouring more into a full cup, right? So personal foundations is really to equip you with these tools so that you can handle a lot more. Not more busyness and tasks, but more serious stuff, more complexity, more nuance, more tragedy, more change, more storms that you can hold more. And that will be about the capabilities, about how you'll navigate that as we go. So just know that that's coming. If this feels a little esoteric or big picture, yeah, we're deepening and broadening you. The next time, the next unit will be around tools and capacities. So that's what's coming up, and that's what's ahead for you and Evolve. Don, what do you want to add before we conclude?
I just want to recognize and be grateful for those of you, for all of you receiving my invitation to go in. All right. This, you got an experience of what this space is supposed to be like. It's for you. And this is what I mean by Keith and I holding and Brian holding the space for you. So when Keith says bring it, bring whatever is happening, this is it. This is your space to also hear each other's wisdom and be in community together. Okay, so I just want to say thank you.
Yeah. And remember, the learning leaves here, the stories stay here. So keep all the details here, but the good insights, the ahas that you can apply, take with you, and put them into practice. Cool. Thank you all. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Take care.